bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go.
And it's Football Friday morning here on Birds 365. You got your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald. The countdown is in earnest to the start of Eagles season. Just 18 days till they report down at the NovaCare complex. And yeah, we're getting excited and pumped up. We appreciate all you guys who stream in this early. If you're already listening to Birds 365, thank you very much. You've just officially achieved diehard status. Those of you who get in here bright and early for the entire 2-hour foray of Eagle conversation, thank you very much. If you want to hit the like button, we won't be upset by that, but appreciate you getting with us for the entire show. Johnny Mac, we got 2 hours of good Eagle conversation, 2 good Eagle guests, Eagle-specific guests. Yesterday, we had Vinny Serrato on, former executive at both the 49ers and the Skins, now talk show host in Baltimore these days. I was kind of bummed not having Vinny on, not because he's Vinny, because he's always a good guest, but by what he had to say. Because I've been singing the praises, trying to open the door for Patrick Queen to be delivered here to Philadelphia, because my major question is still at linebacker for the Eagles. I think they got a damn good roster. I think they're the favorites to win the NFC again. But I have Nicholas Morrow questions as a starter going into the season. And it seemed that Patrick Queen was just a guy who made sense, that they chose not to pick up his fifth-year option as a first-round draft pick, that they drafted a linebacker in the early third round to potentially fill in for Patrick Queen. It sounds to me, and Vinny's there all the time covering the Ravens and is tight with their coaching staff and their front office. It doesn't sound like they're looking to move Patrick Queen anytime through. And I know you guys have been holding the line. I've been saying I'd be willing to give up a day 2 pick for him. And you've been saying Howie Roseman will not give up a day 2 pick for a linebacker. You got no chance of getting Patrick Queen for a day 3 pick.
Well, I think you got no chance of getting Patrick Queen because they're not going to trade him. I mean, before I got to that, now from the Eagles' perspective, if he was on the market, I don't think they would go to a day 2 pick. So it's kind of like back and forth. Well, he's not on the market, so I don't think he's going to be on the market no matter what, because Baltimore thinks they're a Super Bowl contender, which they're a very good team. I said, if they're in the NFC, I told Vinny, they're a Super Bowl contender. I don't know if they are on the AFC side because it's so difficult. But from their perspective, they want to go for it. They want to try to win. And, a rookie 3rd round pick. I think people overblew the not picking up the 5th-year option. And Vinny, being the former executive he is, brought up a lot of good points. One, we always talk about labels, you and I. Drives me crazy, Pepe. Hassan Reddick, he's a linebacker. Nolan Smith's a linebacker. Why can't you play Nolan Smith at all? He's a linebacker. It says he's a linebacker. Play him instead of Nicholas Morrow. 2 completely different positions. Now, here's where it becomes problem for people like Benny or people like Howie Roseman. When you start talking about options and things like that and franchise tag, and they still have these antiquated labels, right? Linebacker means linebacker. So if you list the guy as a linebacker, doesn't matter if he's off ball, doesn't matter if he's edge, he's a linebacker. So all the transition tags, the franchise tags, the option tags, they're all the same for each position. Now, obviously, the 5th-year option has to do with where you're selected.
Right.
But the franchise, the transition tags, that's a little bit different. So from the larger strategy position, and you've seen this around the league, and I brought this up a number of times, it used to be a death knell. If you didn't pick up the 5th-year option or first-round pick, you're done with them. It's no longer a death knell at certain positions, and it happened 3 times this offseason where teams didn't pick up the 5th-year option and they re-signed the players anyway. It's not that they didn't like the players, it's that they saw the positions, they saw the value, they said, that's not worth it. Let's just renegotiate. They end up having a good year or good enough year, and you revisit it and potentially re-sign that particular player. Now, in Patrick Queen's instance, I don't think they're going to bring him back, but you never know. And I'm talking about not this year, I'm talking about next year. The problem with them is they're already playing Roquan Smith at all. You can't pay 2 all-ball linebackers. Well, you can. Chicago proved it. San Francisco, to a degree, proves it. And incidentally, those are probably the 2 best all-ball linebackers teams in the league because they're willing to pay the players.
Right.
Funny how that works out. But most teams don't want to do that, and I don't think Baltimore wants to do it. So ultimately, he'll go. But the reality is they're a Super Bowl contender. Trenton Simpson isn't ready. They're going to try to win and deal with it themselves. And if Patrick Queen plays well and plays himself into this big contract, then the Eagles aren't going to sign him. Somebody will sign him, and they'll get the compensatory pick. So it works both ways, depending on what they do in free agency, because obviously if they sign other players, it could cross that out. But there's a lot of options, and Vinny kind of brought them all up. And the number one reason is they think they're a Super Bowl contender.
And they should
trade him. Yeah.
Any year you make your quarterback the highest paid quarterback, as fleet moving as that can be. We've noted several times Jalen Hurts was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL for less than a week because Lamar signed immediately thereafter. And we're waiting on Burrow and Herbert to potentially pass Lamar as the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Any offseason, you do that. You went through the entire year playing the game of Patsy with Lamar back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I will absolutely say that because of the Jalen Hurts contract that basically made the Lamar Jackson contract doable, if Jalen wasn't getting Deshaun Watson guaranteed money, Lamar said, yeah, I'm not getting that either, seeing as he was the runner-up for the MVP. And I missed a whole boatload of games last year where the Eagles did the Ravens a major solid by getting the deal done with Jalen Hurts. Yeah, any year like that, you have to go in with we're competing this year. We're taking a step back to take 2 forwards at a future date. No, we're in. We're in this year.
I'm 100%. I agree with Baltimore. Look, I hate teams. And I hate the philosophy. It's really overriding sports as a whole, not just the NFL. Because and it's creeping into my mind. I look at Baltimore and say, well, that's a pretty good team. And as I said, if you put them in the NFC, it's a legitimate contender because there's not a lot of great teams. But if you ask me, are they better than Kansas City? Well, no. Are they better than Buffalo? Probably not. And there's a number of other teams. You look at the AFC East, you look at the AFC North, they're both loaded. What if Deshaun Watson turns into Deshaun Watson from Houston? How loaded is the AFC North? if that happens.
Tough division.
There's so many good teams. I look at it logically and say, well, Baltimore's probably not going to go to the Super Bowl. But then on the other hand, I look at, and we talk about Minnesota on the NFC side. They win 13 games and they throw up their hands. Look, I can't agree with that. From a holistic standpoint, I agree with them. Yeah, you're not really a contender, but I hate that mentality of, oh, we won 13 games, but we got lucky. I mean, what is that? And you unplug it and say, we got to rebuild. I hate that mentality. So I'm not going to criticize Baltimore for their thinking. That's the way you have to think. If you don't believe in yourself, nobody's going to believe in you. I mean, it's as simple as that.
And as I was trying to point out with Lamar Jackson, sometimes your moves dictate it. If you sign Lamar Jackson, they could have gone let's take a step backwards to take two forward a future day. Not in a year where you're paying your quarterback, making him the highest paid quarterback in the game. You can't send those mixed messages to your team, to your fan base, or to anybody else. I was just hoping, because I really like the player. I love him kind of coming out of LSU. I love the progress that he's made over his 3 years. This could be a breakout year for him, and I thought that this would be a fine place for him to have that breakout year here in Philadelphia with the Eagles. But it doesn't look like Baltimore is moving off him, and if they did, they'd be asking for a price that the Eagles just seem to be unwilling to pay. I still... Maybe something happened. Maybe the kid from Clemson steps up and plays huge in preseason, and they do believe he's ready to step in and play. Yeah, I'm doubting it. So get ready for your Nicholas Morrow season here in Philadelphia. But hey, Howie Roseman's got the entire preseason to potentially do something else. All right, let me ask you about the guy you mentioned. That would be Hassan Reddick, who you and I both agree he's an edge player. You want to call him a defensive end? Go ahead. You want to call him an outside linebacker? Go ahead. He's, for me, really neither one of those. He's an edge player. We have to create new descriptive adjectives for NFL players as the league and the game changes. He's an edge guy. But for the purpose of the question I'm going to ask John, I'm going to call him a defensive end, okay? Because he's not a linebacker. You list him as a linebacker, put him on the roster as a linebacker. He's not going to be dropping back into coverage. He's not going to be playing 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. So he's not, in my mind, what I think of as a linebacker. But we will look at him as a defensive end for today's conversation. They got a bunch of defensive ends on this team, John. We know who the main rotational guys will be, Reddick and Graham and Sweat. We assume Smith's going to play. I have some concerns about that. Not because I don't think Smith's going to be a very good player. I do. And I think the Eagles got him at a value spot at the end of the first round. I think he could have been drafted higher than that. But we need to find out what the new defensive coordinator thinks of playing rookies and getting them up to speed. Last year, there were very few rookies, except for Jordan Davis, who got a significant time. Reed Blankenship did just because he had to, because there were no other options when CJ went down with an injury. So I think Smith is going to play, but maybe less than the top three. He might not get as many snaps as the others. But Barnett and the Johnson brothers, Patrick and Kyron and Taron Jackson, how many defensive ends can this team actually keep? If you've got your four, count Smith as one of the four main rotational guys, Barnett, both Johnsons, and Jackson, that's 8 guys. They're not keeping
you can cross Kyron off the list. They moved Kyron to off-ball linebacker. They're trying to find a place for him on the roster.
You don't think they're going to play him any on the edge?
No. Just because of what you said. And they're really trying to find a place so he could play special teams anyway. That was his reputation coming in, that he might be a really good special teams player. Didn't really develop that way as a rookie, but still tremendously athletic. Michael Clay often brings up there's a lot of differences between college special teams and NFL special teams. So there's a lot of learning to go on, rule changes, differences, different philosophies, things like that. But yeah, I mean, they're going to keep a lot of defensive linemen, but you can't go much past 10. You could probably squeak it till 11 if you really like somebody. Well, I was talking to an executive. I mentioned this on the show outside of Philadelphia, not with the Eagles. Said they had 17 or 18 legit NFL defensive linemen, front players. Again, I'm talking edge rushers and interior combined. That's freaking unbelievable. And I'm not talking, he's talking about guys like Janarius Robinson, who's probably an NFL player, Contavious Street, who's an NFL player that might not even make this team because they're so deep. But they deserve to be somewhere in the NFL. They're probably going to keep 5 edge rushers, and it's going to be it's going to be Reddick, it's going to be Sweat, it's going to be Brandon Graham, it's going to be Nolan Smith, and then it depends. We've talked about Derek Barnett a lot. I don't think they want to carry Derek Barnett as the 5th defensive end. I think they want to move him. I think they want to trade him if they can. If they do, ultimately, if he proves he's healthy, then that probably opens that final slot for Patrick Johnson. Or Janarius Robinson. I mean, Janarius Robinson, we haven't seen him yet. Well, people like me have seen him. First of all, he looks like he could play. I mean, that guy he's the Tyree Jackson of the defense. He is just so impressive physically. They might want to keep him in that direction, but then you have to toggle the interior. They might be deeper on the interior than they are on the edge because they want to keep somebody like Moro Ojomo as a 7th round pick. Can they? I don't know. They like Marlon Tuipulotu. We'll see if he's able to come back from an injury. Guys like this, they want to keep Noah Ellis, Christian's brother, simply because they want to back up for Jordan Davis. And all of a sudden, if you lose Jordan Davis again for a month, say, well, who's playing nose tackle? Then you got to make people like, is Contavious Street? I brought him up. Is he going to make it? It's a 4 or 5 year NFL player who's been on good defenses, San Francisco and New Orleans. They're so deep on the defensive line, but you can't go much past 10. You can't. You could probably finagle it to get to 11 if you're weaker.
Not if you want your special teams to be good. And you and I both know that was one of the Eagle. I come up short of calling a weakness, but one of their less strong areas was special teams last year. And I think part of that was because when in doubt, they'll give that extra roster spot to the trench, be it either offensive line or defensive line, which is good. And you get to keep your depth and you believe in your guys. Yeah, but when guys are been making big plays against you on special teams, I fear to do this, but the Super Bowl would be one example. You can't go, oh, how do we let that? Well, that's because you didn't dedicate roster spots to getting the best of your special team players. You kept an extra man in the trenches.
And they've gotten away from that. They used to do that with Dave when Dave Phipp was here. They'd have 1 or 2 guys who are just special teams players. And yeah, it's not sexy, but sometimes it's needed. But if you do that, those guys better be good at it. They better be really good at it. And in other words, Kyron Johnson, I'm telling you, they're trying to find a roster spot for him. Well, he better stink and produce if they're doing that. And there's questions if that's going to happen. Ben Van Sumeren, keep an eye on him as well, the rookie.
Right, but he's a quote-unquote linebacker, and I know we get dicey with definitions. He's an unquestioned linebacker, and the Eagles don't really have a love affair with linebackers. Will they do it just for a special teams guy? If he's that good, yeah, maybe is the answer. All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald, Mac and Mac Birds 365. We're going to get a new guest up here. We've never had Rob Kessner, Eagles senior producer for NBC 10, join us. We always like to get new voices and new faces into the mix. Rob Kessner up next with us on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the Mommy Slam Dunk Champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again?
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac guys here on Birds 365 Football Friday. Only 18 days till Eagles training camp opens up. And here's a guy who will be there on the regular for NBC 10, working with and making sure John Clark's hair is completely in place. And if not, he can
Got to be difficult, Rob.
Yeah, there's zero chance that's happening, but thank you, Jay. I appreciate it.
Feel free to smack him upside the head any chance you get. Rob
Yes,
Kessler,
that I'll do. Yeah.
from NBC 10, good enough to jump on board with us. All right, Rob, you've been through this before, the wait before Eagles training camp. We do it to a lesser extent with the Phillies, and that's a little different because it's countdown to Clearwater. You got to get up and get out of town to be able to go at the Phillies, get a season underway. Eagles, you just got to have a pass to get down to the NovaCare complex. How big is this upcoming season for the Eagles off a Super Bowl appearance this year? How much juice you're going to find in the NovaCare complex when you show up there in a couple of weeks?
So I would say that I've been around it for a few years and happen to recall the TO year and what that was like when the Eagles added TO in Lehigh when fans could come to training camp. You won't have the same feel in that regard because you don't have fans at the NovaCare every day. But I would tell you my best gauge of this would be over this past summer, Devontae Smith's celebrity softball game. Now, look, with all due respect to the guys and all their efforts swinging a bat, they're football players playing softball. Sold out crowd, not a seat to be had, 10,000 strong at Iron Pig Stadium, Coca-Cola Park. And to me, that's the best example I can give you of the excitement that surrounds the Eagles right now. I think we're going to see it, and I think it's going to be significant. I think fans are ready for it. Although I will say the Phillies getting hot certainly diverts attention for a little bit, but once the Eagles get back on the field, I think it's all attention on the Birds.
By the way, Rob, I think the Eagles like that when training camp starts. You know, the Phillies get a little bit hot and people start paying attention to them and maybe give the Eagles a little bit of a pass through the summer. And then obviously when the season starts, it's ramping up no matter what. But I think they like that, you know, breathe a little bit because, I mean, you know, how passionate the people are. And you and I were at Milton Williams and Zach McPherson's 7-on-7 tourney. By the way, I got to talk about that Roman Catholic kid with you.
Yeah.
Rob turned me on to him. But, you know, these guys had a short off season. And you know, Zach, I mean, Zach is ripped, you know, for his and Milton for his position's in tremendous shape, and they're young guys. But man, that they played a month more than almost everybody else. And that kind of weighs on you. And you could feel it from those two guys. They're like, wow, we're almost ready to start up again. Really, really quick. Do you think that's going to have an impact on this team?
Well, it's funny we were talking about the Phillies. I don't think there's any question that it impacted the Phillies specifically in their starting pitching. The fact that their run went to a World Series and went an extra month. And look, I realize they're different sports, but to me, there has to be a little bit of carryover. And I think it's not the biggest challenge Nick Sirianni's ever faced. I think winning over the locker room his first year was the biggest challenge that he faced. But this one's significant. I mean, to get everybody back to the level that they're going to need to be to have the kind of effort, especially early in the season with a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, a lot of shuffling going on, especially on defense, as you guys have mentioned. I think it's a real challenge. So I do think there's going to be some carryover. I think training camp is a huge part of it. I will say this, though. The one thing about football, unlike the other sports, is that there's so much turnover. The new blood does tend to keep some of that from carrying over. If you really look at the Phillies, for the most part, same roster. Sixers, we're expecting largely, I mean, who knows on Harden, but it's largely the same roster. In football, there's so much roster churn that does help that, but it doesn't. And certainly having Jalen Hurts helps that, because that's the one thing about Jalen Hurts, and I think it's a big reason why he's the guy they've given everything to. But certainly his on the field play is part of it too. But he keeps guys in line and makes sure that the effort is where it needs to be. And if he doesn't see it, he calls it out from a player perspective, and I think that matters. But it's a factor. It's something I'll be watching in camp.
Rob, you mentioned the Eagle defense and the potential changes this year. Has to be, because there's been a talent turnover. Free agents left, new guys were brought in, draft picks, how much will they step in and play year one? And the guy who will make those decisions is Sean Desai, the new defensive coordinator. We got one media session with Sean before they went away for the summer. And he won the session. He's a smart guy and handled it well and kind of sucked up to the fan base. And
he knows he was a Temple. He knows.
Yeah, he's smart.
He knows how to play the verbal game here in Philly. So we give him the tip of that cap for that. But how much is the defense actually going to change? We know that Nick Sirianni is the head coach. He made the decision. Sean Desai was his guy, hired him over someone that most thought would just get elevated, much like the quarterback coach becoming the offensive coordinator. Chose not to go there. How much ability to do what he wants to do will Sean Desai have in place, or is this going to be a carbon copy with just a new guy on the sidelines calling plays for the Eagles this year?
I do not believe it's going to be a carbon copy. Having said that, John will tell you, when you talk to Nick Sirianni, his affinity for Jonathan Gannon is much higher than your average fan. I mean, he really does respect, the numbers, and he would certainly challenge us if we would ever kind of question some things going on with Jonathan Gannon. But, it's funny, as the Eagles content producer, you spend a lot of your time, especially this time of year, going out and doing stories that are a little different. And one of them I had a chance to do was with Hassan Reddick, who you guys were mentioning. He hosted his football camp, 400 kids, Camden free, and, just kind of talked to him about this very thing. And I said, he certainly, Sean Desai, when he talked to us, said all the right things. He invoked Eagles defenses. He talked about being uber aggressive and those kinds of things. Behind the scenes, are you seeing it? He's like, oh, yeah, we're seeing it. So I can only give you that because it's hard to tell, obviously, in an OTA what we're actually going to see as it relates to real games. But in talking to players, it feels like that's coming. So I'm of the mind that we will see some more aggressive play, more aggressive style. But I'm also aware of what you said and totally agree with that. Like, to completely just rip it up and start over, that's not happening because they were successful. They reached a Super Bowl more often than not. They had good games. So the bashing of Gannon is, in my opinion, over the top. But I do understand the general fan consensus that against the best quarterbacks, the numbers weren't great. I also look at it and say, well, that's kind of the league. The league is built to be that way. And quite frankly, I think the Eagles know it. I think Jeffrey Lurie said it this offseason. Said you look at our Super Bowls, and in those games, both offenses largely scored every time they had the ball. It's just a matter of getting the stop when it matters. And I think they will be more aggressive, though, this season to try and get those kinds of game-changing plays.
Yeah, it's amazing, Rob. You think about 70 sacks, obviously a franchise. For all the talk about Reggie and Clyde Simmons and, the soft defense is the one that got 70 sacks. The soft defense is the one that got to the Super Bowl. I think people forget that's an accomplishment in itself to get to the Super Bowl. Number 2 overall defense, number 1 against the pass. It's I think there's a disconnect between the thought process of Buddy Ryan, the old school, body bag, versus the modern game where it's about, as you mentioned, get the big spot at the big time. The only difference between 52 and 57 is Brandon Graham's strip sack.
That's right.
They were worse on defense, and Jim Swartz will tell you this because he was not happy, as you know, Rob, after Super Bowl 52, giving up 500 yards to Tom Brady. But they made the play. They didn't make the play in 57 against Patrick Mahomes, but the accomplishment is there. Are you surprised that people have kind of skipped over the accomplishment of actually making the Super Bowl?
Yes and no. So yes, the accomplishment of skipping over the Super Bowl, I am surprised. It almost feels like, well, you didn't win at all. I mean, those of us that have been around the Eagles for a long time, just reaching a Super Bowl and winning an NFC championship is a significant achievement. And especially coming off of 9-8 the year before, didn't beat a team with a winning record, tons of questions coming into the season, not about are they a good team, but are they top caliber team? We weren't certainly saying that as a given entering last training camp. Said it was possible, but certainly not as a given. Now you look at it and you enter this year as the favorite in the NFC because of all that was accomplished and everything you mentioned. Having said that, you also point out the buddy aspect, and you guys have been around it long enough, and the old school Eagle mentality. And there's just, look, they were intimidating, and Philadelphia is always going to gravitate toward that. You come into this town, you better earn it, period. And you earn it on the field, you earn it in your job, you earn it in the way you carry yourself. And Philadelphians respected that. But I remember the real quarterbacks doing the same thing, even to Buddy Ryan. I remember Joe Montana walking into the vet, getting his backside handed to him for 3 quarters, and then standing in there and going touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. I mean, those things happen. And Philadelphians have a tendency to forget it because they remember all the great times. And I respect that. But I never totally got the bashing of Jonathan Gannon. I mean, I understand that it's exactly as you point out. It's just a different style of defense that gets run across the NFL today.
Yeah.
Rob, let me ask you about quarterbacks since you mentioned Joe Montana, and I'm not putting him in the same class of Joe Montana, but we did have the runner-up for the MVP here in Philadelphia last year, and Jalen Hurts got paid the way he was supposed to get paid during this offseason. Anybody's around him, anybody who covers him knows that the guy's got his head on straight, and Jeff Lurie called him the most mature 24-year-old he'd ever met in his life, and I think we all concur with that.
Even more than his son, by the way, which is saying something.
Yeah,
even more mature than Julian. So
did pass right over Julian. I wonder what Julian had to say about
right?
that.
Yo, Pops,
that'll be a McMullen exclusive. He'll get Julian on the record going. Hey,
Pops is going to get pushed out a little bit earlier.
I don't know about that. Here's my one concern. It's this big about Jalen Hurts this year. There's no diva in him. He's just not that kind of guy. And sometimes when you get acknowledged, when you get paid, that can rear its ugly head. I don't think that's going to be an issue with the Eagles quarterback. However, he's going to get pulled in a lot of different directions this year. When you do achieve what Jalen did, ESPN wants you for a feature, Fox wants you for NFL Network wants you for a feature, your agent's getting you endorsement deals, which means you got to spend time doing commercials and appearances and stuff like that. Is that any legitimate worry coming into this season? Not that Jalen is going to throw up his hands and go, I'm the man, but that because he almost became the man last year, others are going to want his attention and time and everything else. Eagles have any concern for that coming into this year?
So I would say fair concern for almost anybody else, not for him. And just in this regard, my experience has been in trying to do some things, even myself. And it's been exactly that. Listen, very focused. He has a very strict schedule, very regimented schedule, very distinct things that he's looking to get done. I've seen him do a couple of things with some energy drinks and everything, but they seem pretty quick. They're in the off season. Everybody that I've talked to, nothing has changed. If not, he's more focused on getting the job done. And it's funny too. I actually thought that because I remember some other times when guys would say things just in passing and all of a sudden another player might take it as a slight, right? And Devontae, talked just in passing about, that fumble that he had in the Super Bowl really hurt us. And some guys that we've been around will go, yeah, it's great you point that out. You certainly passed over the 384 total yards and 4 touchdowns. How about that? And instead, he owned it. Said, yeah, you know what? It did. And it can't happen and it won't happen. And I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that it did. And I believe him when he says it. So I don't discount what you're saying because I've certainly been around it long enough to see that can happen. I just haven't seen it yet with Jalen.
Yeah, that's a good point, Rob, because a lot of quarterbacks, they would. I mean, he was the best player on the field in Super Bowl 57 and made a big mistake. And, there are a lot of guys, if one of their players said, hey, that really hurt us, they would have taken it in a negative direction.
Totally.
It's not Jalen's mentality. Nick always talks about his upbringing. They have that in common, coach's son, all that kind of stuff. Kind of embraces tough coaching. I think that's an important part of his success. He really doesn't care about constructive criticism, and that's rare. Maybe even a little bit more rare than it used to be in this generation.
Especially in this generation, because and it's just the nature of the world we live in. I mean, look what we're doing now, right? I mean, we're doing shows we couldn't dreamed of doing 5, 10, 15 years ago. But, the truth is these guys, just like everybody their age, live on social media, and the social media backlash is way more significant in my mind than anything they used to get on sports talk radio or certainly in the newspapers or anything else, because it's incessant. It's always in your face. You can say you're going to try to avoid it. You can't. And so for him to be able to navigate all of that at the age that he is, I honestly think that's why Jeffrey said what he said about his maturity, because it's the ability to handle those things while also galvanizing the locker room. And look, that's a real challenge when you're 23, 24, now going to be 25 years old. And you walk in there, he's a single guy, totally different lifestyle than a 35-year-old like Jason Kelsey, couple kids, totally different lifestyle than Brandon Graham. And those guys, and I bring them up because they're the longest tenured offensive and defensive players, all absolutely have ceded the leadership spot, as has to me, the entire locker room, to Jalen. Jalen kind of sets the agenda and everybody falls in line. That doesn't mean that the offensive line don't turn to Jason Kelsey. Defensive line don't turn to Brandon Graham. They do. But when you're talking big picture, let's get the guys together right before every game. This is what we're after. These are the expectations. This is, as he says, the standard. That's Jalen.
All right, Rob, this is probably jumping a couple of steps ahead. We got to get through a training camp and then preseason games and practices against other teams before we ever get to the first game of the season. But I want to get to the first game of the season and some roster decisions the Eagles are going to have to
Hold on a
make.
second. Are you skipping the preseason games on NBC 10? How dare you, Jody Mack?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Season, baby.
Are you going to be broadcasting those joint practices? Because between you, me, and NBC 10, they actually hold more water these days than your preseason broadcast.
Yeah.
Well, but I apologize in advance for doing that.
I wish, Jody. Trust me.
Understood.
Definitely asking. We'd love to do it.
Here's where my question goes. Last year, Eagle game day, they had 4 running backs on their roster. And Trey Sermon was on the inactive list almost every single. What, he played 2 games last year, John, out of 17?
Yeah, something like that.
Bringing
him up.
Yeah, I feel like the Jags was the game where he actually gave him
the Jags.
First downs in the rain. But yeah, you're right.
Right, but and who? I'm sure somebody was hurt that week. Wasn't Boston or Kenny Gainwell might have missed the game. Don't remember which it was. But they kept 4 on the roster, but basically played 3 all year, except for the handful of games that Trey Sermon played in. They have 5 backs in camp, and Trey Sermon's going to have a tough time despite it seeming that the coach truly appreciates Trey's work habits and how good he looks in practice in shorts. He's going to have a tough time making this team. They basically replaced Miles Sanders with 2 guys, DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny. Are those 2 and add Kenny Gainwell and add Boston Scott, are they just going to keep 3 active on Sundays? Are they going to try and find a way to use all 4 of them? Is one of those guys, and none of them at any point in their career have been guys who are often on the deactivated list. How are they going to shake out that run? I won't even ask how they're going to use them when the season starts, who's going to get what carries and the ball out of the backfield. I just want to know who's up on game day and who's sitting with John McMullen in the press box.
Well, not to avoid the question, but I think what you said off the shoot, it actually does matter. I think training camp settles a lot of that. I think injury could settle a lot of that. I think if you got to that spot where you're through camp, all 4 guys are doing what the back of their baseball card, to borrow a baseball term, says they are, I think there's a world you could see a move. I think there's going to be some interest in, a couple of their backs. And I tend to agree with you. I don't see on a game day them being able to have them all out there. So I think camp sort of determines a lot of that. But if they all make it through, they're all healthy, they're all what you would hope they'd be. Yeah, I would think that they at least at that point start to look at it and you say, okay, as you pointed out earlier, you have concerns about linebacker. Entering camp, I would share them, right? Safety too. So could they come out of camp and say, the linebacker situation didn't settle itself the way we wanted, but a team could really use a Boston Scott and they have a linebacker that we could use? It's not impossible. But we've seen them do that before and make deals with a guy like Ronald Darby, right? Who was a guy that was in a spot where they needed him leading into the Super Bowl season. I could see something like that again. I think the best case scenario for them would be that everybody does play to the back of the baseball card. And then you say, okay, who's in need of a running back? Who's in need of a guy that can give you a little change of pace? And now we have something that you might want.
By the way, 6 backs going to camp, Jody. Kennedy Brooks, the great, the great Kennedy Brooks.
Right.
So don't want to show Kennedy any
That's right.
disrespect.
PS,
Rob, I wanted to bring up.
PS usually means an addition to something you've already written down. PS means practice squad here. Kennedy Brooks is best chances, unless we're talking two big injuries. Kennedy Brooks is going to be on the practice squad at best this year.
That's probably his upside. That's fair to say. I did want to bring up Rob Samaj Beals simply because. So Rob was telling me that we were, as I said, we were at the 7-on-7 tourney that Zach McPherson, Milton Williams hosted in South Jersey. And I saw Rob there, and Rob's telling me, "Hey, watch this kid in the yellow." And I'm like, "All right, whatever. I'll watch this kid." And Alabama's already offered him. And I was just, NFL people for years, Rob, have told me all the innovation in football trickles up. It's like the opposite of most industries. It comes up from college, and even before that, it comes up from high school to college, and then it finally arrives in the pros. I was stunned. Rob has done a lot of high school work over the years for NBC 10, and you guys, broadcast the big games and the highlights and all that kind of stuff. And I was in awe about how advanced these young kids are from these 7-on-7 camps. And then he took the field, and it blew my mind. Now he looks like a sophomore. He's got to get bigger. He's got to gain weight, but the arm talent. And I'm like, why is Nick Saban looking at a sophomore? And I watched him for 10 minutes and I go, oh, I get it. You've been doing that kind of stuff for years. How much more advanced have these kids gotten because of these types of tournaments that they do all the time now?
Yeah, significantly. And, we were talking about it, and I used the example of Josh McCown because I talked to him in the locker room when in his last year with the Eagles about it, because his son was a top recruit. And at the time was actually being recruited for a number of schools against a kid that is likely to be the starter at Ohio State, a young man that I was with literally just yesterday, Kyle McCord, who at the time was playing for St. Joe's Prep. And, we were talking about just in the scheme of the NFL today. And I pointed out to Josh, I said, this year, and this was 2019, said Carson Wentz this year is going to finish this year with 35 touchdowns and 7 picks. I looked it up. Only 4 guys in the history of the league have had 35 and 7. So that many touchdown passes, that few interceptions. And, look, the names on the list are Brady, Manning, Aaron Rodgers, and then Wentz. With all due respect, I mean, there's a difference even in that season. And I just said, I'm seeing more and more of these numbers. And he said, that starts 7-on-7. What we are running at the high school level and the quality of it and the difficulty of it compared to what it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, just gets guys more ready. And then certainly they're seeing what we all see, which is a change in the guard of tackling and hitting and leading with the helmet and safety concerns, which limit the defense. And when they do, it makes the offense more lethal. And I think at this level, coaches understand it. And in the Philadelphia level, I think there's another aspect. In our region specifically, I just have not seen the level of talent to the degree that you're seeing it right now. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Marvin Harrison Sr. was the number 1 guy, right? And it was him and a guy that actually went to my high school with. I grew up with Frank Wycheck, but there weren't many.
Frank Wycheck, yeah.
Frankie Y, my boy.
Yeah.
Dunked on my head circa 1990. That was not a pleasant experience, but there weren't a ton of guys from our region going to the NFL, right? Now, there's a world. First of all, Kyle Pitts was just the number 4 pick in the draft. There's a world in this year's coming draft. Marv is a top 2-3 pick. My daughter's son is a top 10 pick. You realize the genes help in those factors, but there is just a lot more talent at the Division I level, high-end Division I level. I remember the draft real quick when the draft came to Philadelphia, getting a call from, at the time, Florida State, the SID. Hey, would you like to have Jimbo Fisher on your show? And I said, well, yeah, of course. Why? Said, well, he's really in on a tight end for Philadelphia, and he'd love to be on camera and make sure he gets seen. You got it. I'd love to talk about all the guys at the top of this draft with a guy that actually played or coached against them. And it was fun, but it speaks to, it used to be the other way. It was always, and we saw it with DeAndre, right? DeAndre gets recruited by the very, very top, and he's a Philly kid. Very top schools, he's going to Georgia. At best, it was always, okay, Penn State, local schools. Now, the top of the top, Alabama, in on a freshman from Roman Catholic. It's different. And that's really a credit to the coaches, but it's also the ability to do these 7-on-7s, be with kids more often. And I just think it's helped. And I think it's a good thing. I really do.
Let me just double check something. You said Trot's kid, top 10 pick?
Yeah.
You think so?
I think top.
I mean, it's early.
First round pick. I think
first round. He's got real ability.
Isn't he a linebacker like his father?
Yeah, that's
didn't the Lions get ripped to shreds for drafting a linebacker as high as they did this year?
I didn't say the Eagles.
You kidding me? Anybody's going to take a linebacker in the top 10? Are you guys paying attention to what's going on in the National Football League?
Hey, there are guys.
What are you, nuts?
Roquan was a top 10 pick. There are guys.
Roquan's a good couple of years ago now, John.
Devin White was a top 10 pick. Yeah. I don't know. Marvin,
maybe not that high, but look, he is exceedingly highly thought of, and he's just a kid from our backyard. And just the explosion of talent from our backyard is really what I've noticed, certainly in the last 5 to 10 years.
In case you didn't pick on it, I was just pimping you two guys, but I'm actually critiquing the National Football League.
I was actually
they have so devalued linebackers, it's ridiculous.
By the way, where is Samaj going? Is he going to choose Alabama or Penn State?
Yeah, right. Rob. He's got. I don't know.
He's got like a million offers. So
yeah. Well, I will tell you,
he's going into his junior year, so he's got another year to make up in the line.
Sophomore.
He's going into his sophomore year. And McMullen wants him committing already?
Yes.
Come on, Johnny, cut the kid some slack.
I don't want him
to let him have his first beer before he
I was
amazed. Play college football.
No, I was amazed at how much interest generated for a freshman quarterback. That's what I was talking about. And then Rob told me, watch the kid in yellow. He's wearing a yellow hat, yellow jersey. And I said, all right, how good could it be? It was pretty stinking good.
Pretty good.
Yeah. So I kind of got it. At R. Kessner, NBC 10. Make sure you follow Rob on Twitter. Does a tremendous job as the Eagles senior producer.
Senior just means I'm old, John. That's what that means.
I know. I'm with you. I'm a senior writer, senior editor.
We got 3 seniors here, boys.
Yeah. 3 seniors.
Well, listen, I was going to give Jody Mack a shout out for something, but now that he, ripped me on the Trotter thing, I'm just kidding. A quick story. Circa 1993, young unknown guy doing a radio show at unknown Millersville University. And I call into the listener line at WIP, get the producer on the line, say, is there any shot Jody will call? Not only does Jody call, Jody does a half hour on a show where it was me, him, and maybe my mother listening.
Nice.
God bless Jody Mack.
Yeah, man.
I think I remember that.
There's no way you remember that, but you're a good man for doing it.
But always try and do the right thing by the young guys.
I was thinking about it. Here was the debate. So I was on with 2 of my buddies. One guy's a Maryland guy, and another guy just happened to be a big fan of Joe Smith. We were debating who's going to have the better career, Allen Iverson, Rasheed Wallace, or Joe Smith. I was the Rasheed guy because I'm Philadelphia, and obviously we all lost that to AI, but that's okay.
Yeah, Joe Smith was a hell of a player, though.
He was.
He really
stuck around for a long time. He was in the league for a long while.
That's typical competition, though. AI and Rasheed, though. That's
no.
But he was a good player.
He was.
Gonna lose that bet. Rob, we appreciate you jumping in with us. We'll definitely be having you back on.
Yeah, you're in the mix now, Rob.
Well,
you're in deep. You're in deep.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate
our
it.
pleasure.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you
All right.
much. That's Rob Kessner, Eagles senior producer, senior. When he was just a little high school guy, I was a little older, but not that much older.
That's magnanimous of you, Jody. Get the call from Millersville, doing 30 minutes with Millersville University. I'm impressed.
The megatropolis that is Millersville. I didn't even know where Millersville was. So I said, yeah, fine. You need me? I can give you half an hour. Like that. That's not a problem. You try and do the right things. By the young guys, great to get Rob in with us today. Did a nice job. We will certainly have him back. Joining us coming up in about 25 minutes is a guy who we've never had on before either. Oh, no, we've had him on a lot. Ed Kratz, Johnny's running buddy from Sports Illustrated, is going to jump in with us. We did not review John and Ed cracked their top 10 yesterday, and we never got around to mentioning who the guys have at number 10. So we've got 10 and 9. We'll hold off on that till when Eddie joins us. Ed Kratz, about 25 minutes with us here on Birds 365.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365, a football Friday, and only 18 days until the Eagles open up their camp and the 2023 season gets underway with a lot expected, a lot of pressure, and I want to revisit the question I asked of Rob with you, John. Because I don't think it's going to be a make or break. Maybe just because it's intriguing, I think that it will not be a major factor in whether the Eagles win 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 games this year, because I think they've got it pretty well covered. But the running back question I put past Rob. Boston Scott back. Kenny Gainwell back. Miles Sanders out, and he was the guy who was the workman back last year. and he's basically replaced by DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny, one running back the Eagles traded for, minimal to have to give up to the Detroit Lions to get him. Thought it was an outstanding deal by Howie Roseman. And Rashad Penny basically on a make-good contract. If he stays healthy and has a big year, he's going to go back out on the free agent market next year and maybe get paid that much more. But it's kind of on a sing-for-his-supper type year. And Trey Sermon back as last year, who was the fourth back who didn't get activated much. This year, he's going to be the fifth back who doesn't get activated much. I don't know that they can carry 5 backs on this team. How are they going to handle this, John? Just from a roster perspective, we saw what they did last year. Sermon got activated a couple of times all season because someone wasn't quite ready to go on a given week, but they kept 4 on the roster all year long. Who are those 4 and how do they manage it? Because DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Kenny Gainwell, even Boston Scott. Boston did not get deactivated much during his career. Is that going to be Boston Scott's spot in life this year? Deactivated on game day?
Potentially, but I think Rashad Penny's one of the more interesting stories of camp, as you mentioned. I like that terminology. He's got to sing for a supper, but I would take it one further. I would say, he's got to be the lead back because he's not going to help in other ways. We talked about special teams at the beginning of the show. Not going to help there. So why are you going to keep him around as the third or fourth back? Doesn't make a lot of sense. And you're right. I don't think they're going to 5. We're just talking about how many defensive linemen they have. They need these roster spots to keep legitimate NFL players. And don't get me wrong, Rashad Penny is clearly the best pure runner on this team. He's always hurt. We know the story. But when he's on the field, he produces, but he's always hurt. If he's not the number 1 back, like Swift helps in other ways because Swift can catch the football. He can do a lot of different things. Kenny Gainwell the same way. Boston Scott can play special teams. He's the top kick returner on the team, even though that becomes less and less valuable each year in the NFL. He really was a good kick returner when he took that job last year. Those guys help in other ways. Rashad Penny, it's just, he's going to run the football. And if he's not the lead back, why are you keeping him around? You only paid him $600,000. You can easily move on. So to me, he's going to be the linchpin. If he's here, Trey Sermon's probably hitting the waiver wire and, then the practice squad if they can get him back. But yeah, I can't see them keeping five running backs. So, what does Rashad Penny do? Does he prove, hey, I'm the guy? And that might be for 5 games, Jody, and then he gets hurt, but he's got to be the guy for 5 games. And it's going to be an interesting, I think, training camp storyline.
And while I agree with Rob, and I tried to deter him for this, and he would have none of it, of course it's going to be decided by what happens before the season starts. But even that makes me laugh because how much work did the Eagles actually do? You're going to make a running back decision because a guy looks good in shorts and shells? Okay, that's what it's now come down to. You used to be able to actually judge the way a guy might play on Sundays by what he did in preseason, but because of the CBA and the Eagles' overall stance of protecting their players, how do you really judge who's
running backs? One of those positions. The Eagles, we talked about, they don't even do team drills. It's strictly 7-on-7 in the spring. They don't even do team drills. So the offensive, defensive linemen, they're all doing individual work. The running backs, they get involved, but in the passing game.
And that's not going to help Rashad Penny, as you just pointed out.
No. So, yeah. But the thing about Rashad Penny, all right, you're not worried about the physicality You've seen it. You're worried about him staying healthy. I mean, but if he's not going to be the guy, I don't see why he's here. I really don't. So either to me, he's the lead back, whether it's 1 game, 5 games, 10 games, hopefully 18 games, hopefully 20 games into the Super Bowl, 18 weeks in the regular season. It's unlikely, but to me, I brought him in. He's going to be my starting running back week 1. That's how I would go about it. That's how I would go about it. And I would run him until he can't run anymore. And then I would move towards the more committee approach with Swift and Gainwell and Scott when he does get injured. But he's better than those guys. I'm not sure the Eagles think about it the way I do, but he's a significantly better runner than all 3 of those guys.
Right. But how do you balance that against, we make this decision, he's the guy, oh, shoot, here he goes, he's out for a month again. That's the hard part about Rashad Penny, because you can love his game, you can crunch his numbers, average yards per carry off the charts, and just when you say, all right, we're committing to him, boom, he's gone, and then you're screwed. So.
Well, that's why you got to have that contingency. You got to know in the back of your mind, all right, he's the guy until he's not the guy. And you have to have Swift ready, and you have to have Gainwell ready. And Boston, you already know, is going to be ready when you just pull the emergency cord. He's proven it. Yeah, I mean, but that's part of the gamble. They had Jody, they had a 1,269 yard rusher last year. Say what you want about Miles Sanders, but that's not easy to replace,
right?
Even with a great offensive line and a quarterback that makes it easier for running backs, which I acknowledge, it's still not easy to replace.
And here's the one place that I would disagree with what Rob said. He said, maybe, just maybe, if all the guys are healthy and living up to the back of their football cards, not baseball card if you're talking football players, but their trading card with their stats say they are, well, then the Eagles would have an excess and maybe they can make a trade. There's going to be no trade for a running back this year.
No,
teams don't value running backs.
No.
Just look at the contracts that Rashad Penny and Boston Scott signed during this offseason. They were both free agents. They could have gone to any team that they wanted to. They both chose the Philadelphia Eagles because I'm going to guess here that no one offered them more or even maybe as much as the Philadelphia Eagles. So there aren't teams out there that are going, God, please let us give us a chance to trade for Boston.
Well, if there's a trade like that, you remember Eli Harold? He was here for
Eli Harold. Give me details. I do not remember Eli Harold.
He was outside linebacker, defensive end, sort of tweener, 3rd round pick. Just looking him up, San Francisco 3rd round pick. He got traded to the Eagles in 2019 in training camp for Ryan Bates, who was at the time.
Ryan Bates, I remember that name.
Yeah, well, he's a starter in Buffalo. At the time, he was an undrafted free agent. He was a rookie, Ryan Bates. And he wasn't going to make the Eagles, who were deep and on the offensive line. And so it was just a player-for-player trade. Early in training camp, the Eagles needed some help. Didn't make the team, and moved on. Sometimes you see that. That's why I was bringing it up, where you have a surplus at one position and somebody else has a surplus at a different position. You need that. You make a quick trade. And a lot of times, in the case of Eli Harold, he didn't even make the team. And it worked out for Buffalo, who got Ryan Bates and has turned into not a great player, but he's a starter.
I'm sure Howie is appreciative of your bringing up a trade that he lost, Johnny Mac. That Howie doesn't like taking those L's.
Well, Ryan wasn't making this team, so I mean, just wasn't. So, You try, you take a flyer. Didn't work. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a loss because Ryan developed, but he wasn't making this team. He wasn't. I mean, there's no way he was making this team. So I get the thought process. I'm just bringing up sometimes you have those player for player trades in training camp, and sometimes they mean nothing and they turn into nothing. But yeah, as a whole, somebody has a bunch of injuries, a couple injuries at running back, and they say, hey, let's get a veteran guy. But I don't think the Eagles want to trade Boston Scott. I mean, I think they want him on this team. I think they value him to a certain level, certain level. Obviously, they're signing him to 1-year deals, but they know. I always bring up the utility player baseball comparison. There's an art to being a utility player in baseball. Not everybody can do it. The assumption is, oh, well, this guy's better. Just put him on the roster. But if he's only playing once every 5-7 days, he can't do it. Whereas you have these guys with the mentality that they can do it. And I'm more of an old school baseball guy. I always bring up Luis Sojo because he was great at it. Played every 8 different positions, big hits and big situation. Now, if you had to play every day, you'd be in trouble. But he was just he could handle it, and he excelled in the role. That to me is Boston Scott. You don't want him out there for 17 games, but if you need him, as the New York Giants can attest, he freaking shows up.
I actually believe that was the place that the Eagles could lose him to. I thought the Giants might just sign him just so he'd stop scoring touchdowns against them for no other reason. If you can't stop him, sign him. That's what I thought Boston Scott's eventual landing spot could be, but he stays here in Philadelphia. I'm just pointing out that they've got at least one, if not too many running backs as of right now, and you went down as far as Kennedy Brooks. Good luck on that practice squad, Kennedy. The Eagles have
now. Did that make sense to you? Because that doesn't make sense to me. That Penny can't be part of the rotation. Did I explain it incorrectly? Like he's not. He can be part of a rotation. I'm not saying he's going. I'm saying, but he's got to be the lead back. He's not going to be the third down back. He's not going to help you on special teams. Am I not explaining
well, no,
it correctly?
You did a good job explaining it, John. It's just the Eagles like to think of themselves as innovators, and maybe they're planning on doing something we haven't seen in the National Football League before. And I'm not predicting or projecting this. I'm just saying be careful because it's the Eagles, and they like to be ahead of the curve. Maybe they have designated starters that on a given week, Rashad Penny is inactive, and then the next week, Rashad Penny is the starter. That on a given week, DeAndre Swift is active, and the next week he's inactive, even though he started in the week before, carried 12 times for 65 yards and a touchdown. I don't know that they won't do that. That's not something you see in the NFL. It hasn't happened before, but the game and sports in general are ever changing. So maybe the Eagles will try and do something altogether different this year because they're running back situation is unique.
I always call that stuff laboratory stuff. I'd like to call it. You remember when the Eagles? I always bring up 21 pony. Their 21 pony formation in the offseason when they had Darren Sproles and they drafted Donnell Pumphrey, and they're like, these guys are tough matchups in the passing game, and they did it in the offseason, 7-on-7s and shorts. They did team drills back then. And the minute the pads came on, they said, oh, somebody's got to block somebody. We can't really run 21 pony. My point to, if Rashad Penny, and maybe Fletcher Cox in his prime is a better example of this, because every year when Fletcher was the best player on defense and, arguably the second best defensive tackle in football, every year the Eagles would say, man, we got to start limiting his reps. He was playing too much. He was playing too many reps. And they were concerned about, wearing him down. And every year, big situations, are you going to take Fletcher Cox off the field? Nope. Big third. Nope. You're not taking him off the field. If Rashad Penny is gashing people and he's healthy, you're not taking him off the field. You're not. That's just the way the NFL works.
No, but they are on third down. If he's having a good first and they're in the second half and it's a close game and it's 3rd and 9, Rashad Penny isn't staying on the field just because
he's not a pass
65
catcher.
yards in the first half.
No, but I'm talking more of that, what you were saying. Well, let's start Rashad Penny in week 1, but let's not start him in week 2. Well, if he gashes people in week 1, no, he's going to be there in week 2. Yeah, he's not going to be the pass catching back. That's Kenny Gainwell. And maybe Swift can do it as well. So we'll see how Swift factors into that. That to me is an interesting conversation. To me, and again, we get back to the original point with Rashad Penny and why I think he's an interesting story. He's the guy or he's not. And if he's not the guy, he's probably not going to be on this team.
All right. All I'm saying, John, and maybe this, I would give this a
and by the guy, I mean
10% chance of happening, but maybe, just maybe this year, the Eagles go the load management route. And I'm not talking in game, I'm talking sitting. Yes, that if Rashad Penny's played 3 games in a row and they dodge a bullet and he's played real well, guess what? Rashad Penny inactive week 4. Even though he's had 3 good games. Why? Load management. If it's leaked into other sports, it can leak into the NFL as well.
Anything can leak in. I'm not saying anything's possible, but that'll be that will be innovative, because if a guy's playing well and he's healthy and you're sitting him for load management, I mean, nobody did it until Greg Popovich did it. Somebody's got to be the first.
Somebody's got to do it first. And
somebody's got to do it first.
Like to be ahead of the curve.
I'll believe it. I'll believe it when I see it.
Just saying, keep an eye out for it this upcoming year. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. That makes us Mac on Birds 365. One Special Ed Cracks is up next here on Birds 365.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the Mommy Slam Dunk Champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again?
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Up with the
Eagles.
Mac and Mac on a football Friday. We've only got a couple summer football Fridays left before the Eagles open up camp. Then it'll be an actual football Friday. Lucky enough to get Ed Kratz to join us on a football Friday. We don't usually have Kratz on Fridays, do we, John? This is like a special Ed Kratz appearance, is it not?
We get him during the season on Fridays a lot, but yeah.
Did we?
Yeah.
I thought we'd have Ed on earlier in the week.
A lot of football Fridays.
Football
right?
Fridays, all right.
Everything runs together. I don't know. I don't know, Jody.
Okay, all right. Maybe I'm just making stuff up. All right, here's what I just made up last segment, Ed. If you didn't catch it, John thinks I'm like whistling in the wind, and I probably am. This upcoming season, with Rashad Penny being the back that he is, tremendously talented, stats off the charts, yards per carry, everything else, but also a history of injury that he misses games every single year. This year, the Eagles use him, but take him off the roster on certain weeks for load management. That they deactivate him on given weeks, even if he played well the week before, because if you use him, if you overuse him, the injury's going to happen. So why don't we manage it by just not even dressing him for a game, that they have enough depth in that backfield that they can give Rashad Penny weeks off at a time via load management. Any chance the cutting edge, ahead of the curve Philadelphia Eagles go down the road that road this year?
Yeah, listen, Nick Sirianni likes to ride the hot hand. He said that before. And what are you saving Penny for if you have all this depth? I mean, he's only here on a 1-year deal. You may as well run him into the ground if you can. I mean,
yeah,
you're going the exact opposite.
Exactly.
Until he's hurt.
Baby. Common sense. Run him until you can't run him.
Exactly.
I'm with you.
It's a big year for him. Obviously, given the state of the running backs in the NFL and how they, all the talk of them being undervalued, and they are. Penny has to come out firing, and he has to keep firing until the end of the season if he wants to keep playing in this league. So, I think he would resist wanting to sit down, especially if he's rolling. I say you just keep rolling with him week to week, each week.
Yeah, plus knowing Nick Sirianni, the further I think about it, we were discussing this, Ed, and Jody's load management theory. Nobody did it in the NBA till Greg Popovich. There's always got to be a burst. But to me, it's not going to be Nick Sirianni, because if you think about it, well, if you say, let's say Rashad Penny is the starting running back and plays well against New England and plays well against Minnesota, and then you say, oh, Tampa Bay stinks, and you're going to sit him down. Boy, that's just not Nick Sirianni's mindset. I mean,
John, let me ask you a question. Is Nick Sirianni's mindset less work in preseason is good?
Well, I think that's an organizational mindset. I think
then maybe the organizational decision is that they use a running back by committee and give some guys some load management.
We talk about a lot, and it happened with Doug Peterson, and I think it was Ben Solak was on the show and brought up that, hey, coaches in Philadelphia don't have as much power as they do in certain other cities. And I said, you know what? Ben's right. If they did that to Nick Sirianni, I think that's the first sign of, hey, there's going to be some issues. I do not think he would accept that. If Rashad Penny, remember the situation, and it's all hypothetical. He's playing well. And then he's going to tell, oh, you got to sit Rashad Penny down for load management. I do not think that would go over well. Ed?
I agree. And listen, I think the Eagles' load management philosophy comes during the week leading up to a game, is they'll rest players and not let them practice. I can't remember any time where they sat a player on game day just to kind of manage his load. And again, what are you saving Rashad Penny for? He's here for 1 year. I doubt he comes back next year, no matter what kind of year he has. I don't think he's coming back. So,
well, if he plays well, he's not coming back, and if he plays poorly,
he's not coming back.
Not coming back. So I'm with you.
So C, all of the above. He's not coming back.
I'll play Howie Roseman for you. What am I saving him for? January. That's what you're saving him for. That if he's rushing for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns in a late September, early October game, that's a really good thing. Eagles want to win games in January and February, and that's what you're saving Rashad Penny for.
Yeah, again, you go to the depth of this team, and Kenny Gainwell. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, Kenny Gainwell's expecting a bigger role this year. He came out and told us that when we talked to these guys back in May and June, that he's expecting a bigger role. And then you have Boston Scott and Trey Sermon. I'll tell you this: I don't think we're going to see a lot of Rashad Penny in these 3 preseason August games, or DeAndre Swift. We're going to see a lot of Trey Sermon. Probably some Kenny Gainwell and maybe some Boston Scott. And they also have that Kennedy Brooks, right? The undrafted free agent runner from Oklahoma. I mean, we'll see a lot of him in August.
Oh, yeah. We're going to see a lot of Kennedy Brooks in the preseason games.
That's where they're going to manage their load, so to speak, with Penny and Swift. They're not going to play a lot in August.
And, oh, by the way, and I'm not accusing either of you two guys doing it, but others, maybe John once in a while, but not that often. Kenny Gainwell had that great playoff run. No, Kenny Gainwell had that great playoff game against the Giants. He didn't do all that much against the 49ers, and he may have had more carries than Miles Sanders in the Super Bowl. 7 rushes for 21 yards. Nothing special. Kenny Gainwell didn't have a great playoff run. He had a great playoff game against the Giants, but people lump it in as if Kenny Gainwell took the running back spot away from Miles Sanders. No, he had 1 big game and then 2 mediocre games thereafter.
Yeah, I just think it was the confidence level that Nick Sirianni, as the season went on, they showed more confidence in Kenny Gainwell. I mean, I think that's it, more than the fact that he had a great.
Well, I think it's Miles got banged up. I mean, Miles was banged up. He had the knee injury.
Right.
The incident that I won't bring up. He had the knee injury. And then he got hurt in the first play of the Super Bowl with the hand. I think it had more to do with Miles getting injured. But the Eagles were very happy with Kenny Gainwell. That's my point. They were very happy with the way he played down the stretch of the season. Remember, he had a bad year. They kind of disappointing regular season. And all of a sudden, he showed a little bit of juice late, and the team was very happy with the way he played when Miles got banged up, and it kind of worked out for him a little bit. It's going to be interesting to me. It's Kenny Gainwell versus DeAndre Swift, right? Because they're very similar players. They're both very good receivers. Kenny's a better inside runner than people give him credit for. He's been very good in the red zone. Who's going to be the third down back? Because Swift is a very good receiver. And I go back to Penny, to button up Penny, and this is what I've been trying to get across. Evidently, I'm not explaining it well to the listeners. If Rashad Penny's not the lead back, and by lead back, I'm saying Miles Sanders. So think about Miles Sanders last year. If he's not that guy, should he even be here? Because, then you start talking about what you said, Ed. He's only here for 1 year anyway. You only guaranteed him $600,000. Nick Sirianni keeps bringing up Trey Sermon. I don't know if it's real or not, but he keeps bringing him up unprompted. Boston Scott, they have confidence in. If he's not the lead back, why is he even here?
Insurance, I guess. But you're right. If you're looking at, reducing the roster at the running back position, you're not going to cut Kenny Gainwell because he's that definition of cheap labor that Howie Roseman likes to talk about. He's signed through next year.
Yeah.
You have 2 years left with him. Same with Trey Sermon. You have 2 years left on his rookie contract. So you're looking at your 1 year guys, DeAndre Swift. They're not going to cut him because they traded for him. They gave up a 4th round pick. And I think he's going to be the lead back. And I think they're going to mix Penny in, occasionally. But if you're looking for guys to cut, Penny could certainly be, on that block because of, like you said, the 1-year deal, you're only guaranteeing him $600,000. Maybe he doesn't make this team, but I would be surprised. Boston Scott, the team loves him. He's the guy that was taking the first team reps in the spring, right?
Yeah.
But again, he's a 1-year deal type of player. Can catch the football like Swift and like Gainwell can. I mean, he might be the extra part that, maybe they part ways with him, but I don't think you're going to keep 4 running backs or 5 running backs on the roster.
Well, you're definitely not keeping 5.
No,
I think they keep 4. But I guess my whole point is if Rashad Penny's not 1,
yeah,
I don't necessarily know he's got a role because he's not going to help as a receiver. He's not going to help on special teams. Now, maybe you're right about the insurance part because DeAndre Swift, if he's the lead back, I think people kind of forget he's had injury problems as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's never played more than 13 games. He's never run for more than 617 yards. So maybe insurance, but he's not playing special teams. He's not playing as a third down back. So to me, it's either he's part of the equation, or if he's not, then he's out the door.
Yeah. And he's a fun guy to watch. If you look at some of his highlights going through the years, I mean, he's a bowling ball. He's a load coming through the middle of a defense. So, again, you're right. I mean, what would his role be? Would he be happy with a kind of a reduced role, maybe playing 10 to 12 snaps a game, if that? The way the running back position is, I think you'd be happy with that. If you're Rashad Penny, you want to make this team and you contribute whenever your number's called, and that's that. Because if you have to test the market in August, it's going to be awfully hard to find another team unless there's an injury that crops up through the course of training camps or early in the season. But if you're Rashad Penny, you'll take whatever role's handed to you. And you're right. The question is, will he have a role, and what will that role look like?
Ed, we've been talking about the running backs, talked about how's it going to be decided, who's going to make the coaching staff, the organization. Do you actually attempt to judge what the guys can do in preseason when preseason isn't what preseason used to be? And if that's the case, how are they going to judge who should be the starting right guard on this team this year? There isn't going to be a ton of film work. He's doing great in moving his feet on a drill on the sideline. Is that, or just do you trust Stoutland? The Stoutland University knows that they can judge by the guy standing there and be able to look at them and go, there's our best right guard. How are they going to judge who gets the nod at right guard for the Eagles this year?
Well, I mean, it is going to be a battle, and they'll have the eye in the sky. They'll be taping every rep at practice, and we may not see that battle during the preseason. In the games, I mean, but we'll see. I mean, the Eagles are hosting 2 joint practices, right? I think the Browns come here, and
Browns and Colts. Jim
Yeah,
Schwartz and Shane Steichen. Ed Kratz.
Yeah. So, we'll see a lot of that battle in those practices, I'm sure. And, we'll start to get a good idea of how that battle's going once the preseason games do hit, once the actual games happen, because then we'll see who's going to be out there more reps than the other guy. But they have their ways of judging and, evaluating offensive line play led by Stoutland. Stoutland's opinion carries a lot of weight. So, that'll be a decision probably offered by Stoutland, and Sirianni and company will have to agree on it, and we'll go from there. But I think Cam Jurgens right now is going to get most of those reps. I'm not sure they want to turn this job over to a rookie, in a year when they really have Super Bowl aspirations.
But John made this point, and I got to give him credit for it. I had not thought along the lines. I said, oh, shoot, he's exactly right. Do you judge who's going to be the starting right guard more by Jason Kelce than anything else? If he's going to be given downtime in preseason, because he always does. They take care of their veterans. They don't play. Well, then who's getting the number 1 center reps? If it's not going to be Kelce, if they're going to give him downtime and Jurgens is the guy who's jumping in there, Well, doesn't that tell you that they want Jerkins to be the backup center more than they want him to be the starting right guard, and that they really believe that Steen's going to be able to jump in and take that job? How much does Jason Kelsey's status on the sideline depict who's going to be the starting right guard?
Yeah, they're going to have to find somebody because Kelsey takes the day off every week during practice, right? He takes that one practice day off, Veterans Day off. And who's going to take the center reps? Is it going to be Cameron Tom or Cam Jurgens? If you commit to Jurgens being your right guard, then you're going to have to find somebody else. I don't think you would move him back to center during the week to interrupt what he's trying to learn at right guard to get ready for a game. It's an interesting question. And I know the Eagles want to get something out of Cam Jurgens. I mean, they spent a second-round pick on him last year. You're signed for 4 years. This is year 2. I would think they'd want to start seeing some return in year 2 on that investment. And if they have to wait till year 3, then, all of a sudden you only have 2 years with Cam Jurgens before you have to give him another contract if he plays well. So I really think that they'll manage that center position with reps if it's Jurgens at right guard. I don't think Jurgens will flip back to center, maybe for an occasional rep here and there just to keep sharp at that position. But I think you have to commit to Jurgens being your right guard, and you have to keep him there. And you find someone else like a Cameron Tom or, whoever else can snap the ball at center. I'm not sure.
Brett Toth, baby. Brett Toth.
Brett Toth. Yeah, I mean, he hasn't done it, has he? I mean, he's kind of
he got hurt playing center in week 18. They moved him to center when he tore his ACL. So
it could be Toth. Yeah, I mean, he could be your backup center then. Because
to me,
it's not fair to Jurgens as a second-year guy to make him go back and forth.
Well, that's why of the 100 minutes we got in the spring, that was the most interesting thing I saw, because in the second practice, and again, it's only individual drills because they only do 7-on-7s. But in the second practice, Kelsey took it off, and Cam Jurgens was taking reps at center, and I thought that was interesting, but I don't know why. Because to me, it could signal two things. They're so confident in Cam Jurgens, they don't care, and they're going to toggle him back and forth. And every time Kelsey gets a day off at training camp, he's going to be center, and they're going to try to get Tyler Steen some reps at right guard. Or they really, really, really want to look at Tyler Steen at right guard. It could be either one, but I agree with you, Ed. You're either so concrete on Cam Jurgens, or you don't believe in Cam Jurgens at right guard. And I think it's I said Penny, it's also one of the most interesting storylines, because you're right. When it hits the regular season, if Cam Jurgens is the right guard, there's no moving back and forth during the week when you're preparing for teams. He's got to be the right guard, and you got to find a backup center. I think, and this is only a think, and I want to make this clear to the listeners, this is my opinion. I really think they hope Tyler Steen can play as a rookie. I really hope. I really think they hope that, because Cam Jurgens is going to be a good center. I don't know. He'll probably be competent right guard. Why not wait another year? Who cares? Who cares? I think there's too much emphasis on he's got to be on the field because he was a second-round pick.
Yeah, I just think it's a value thing. I mean, you're losing value after taking him in the second round and not getting him on the field. But it is interesting that when you talk to the players, and I was at the Jason Kelsey bartending thing and talked a little bit to Jason, just individually. And whenever they talk about that right guard, it's like whoever it's going to be. It's not like they're saying, Cam or Tyler. I mean, they don't even know. They're saying, whoever.
Jack Driscoll. Throw Jack Driscoll in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, Driscoll, sure. I think Driscoll's probably your reserve tackle. Given the depth at that position, that's a whole nother issue. Is who's your swing tackle? A role that Dillard kind of filled the last couple years. So that's a whole nother issue. Who's your swing guy? I think it's Driscoll, so I'm not sure he's even in the mix. But it's going to be tough for a rookie to come in there. I mean, he really has to stand out day one and keep getting better as camp goes on for him to win that job, in my opinion, because I'm not sure you want a rookie out there, even though you're playing between Kelsey and Johnson, two of the all-time greats in this game. It's a big ask for a rookie to step in and perform at such a high level that's going to get this team where it wants to go.
Ed Kratz, while you were down in Sea Isle when they had the big gathering for Eagles Autism, did you perhaps see Quez Watkins? Did he get down there to prove that he could stretch the beach the same way he stretched as the field for the Eagles this year? Was he one of the attending it? Because they had a bunch of guys that showed up down there. I think Quez is going to be another one of the interesting stories this year. Shame on me. I should have known this. I just found it out yesterday. He got almost triple his salary from what it was supposed to be because of the performance bonus that he got as per the collective bargaining agreement. I thought there was a chance that they might even move off Quez. Now I don't believe that's the case. So if he's going to be here, he's going to be playing. The coach likes him a lot. He's given a verbal backing this offseason. What kind of year is Quez Watkins going to have?
Yeah, he wasn't in Sea Isle stretching the beach, Jody.
He should have been there. He's got to prove that he can stretch that beach.
Maybe he was, working out somewhere else, getting ready.
He was in Ocean City while everybody else was in Sea Isle. How did I not know that?
Yeah, I don't know where Quez was that day, but
probably Texas would be my guess.
Working out somewhere with Exos or whoever. But obviously a pivotal year for him, and he is going to be on this team, and he's going to be in that mix to be the third receiver with the great and wonderful Oz. Olamide
Zacchaeus. I love when I get the opportunity. Olamide Zacchaeus. Yeah.
So, he's going to have a pivotal role. I don't know what kind of year he's going to have. There's just not a lot of traffic. I mean, he was targeted, 50 times last year, which is a pretty decent amount of traffic for a number 3 receiver when you're talking about Smith and Brown on the outside, and Goddard as a tight end. But, he's going to have to take advantage of every opportunity that comes his way. He's going to have to learn to fight for the ball, be more physical as a receiver. And we'll see where that lands him, because this is a pivotal year and he's going to be on the team and they're thin at receiver. Yeah. So he's going to be one of those guys that to me isn't going anywhere. And we're going to see a lot of him in August. I think we're going to see the Eagles throw him the ball. Jalen Hurts get him the ball as often as he can. And we'll see him in the preseason games, and, we'll see what kind of year he has. But he wasn't at the Shore doing any celebrity bartending with Kelsey. There were a lot of other guys there. Goddard was there, and Fletcher Cox was there.
Lando becoming a star.
Lando Dickerson was down there, and Brandon Graham, and even Trent Cole showed up, which was kind of
was Jordan there? Because Jordan had to go out to Hawaii.
He was probably getting ready for the big wedding, the nuptials. Yeah. So he was not there. He was there in year 2. But Barwin and Trent Cole were there. Surprising. I mean, I know Barwin works in the organization, but Trent Cole took a day off, I guess, from hunting, wildlife.
Yeah, he doesn't
out in Indiana.
Now, remind me, Jody, we got to get to our top 25, si.com/NFL/Eagles. But before that, I want to get to you. First of all, I see it all the time. Filet Ringo's going to sign before training camp. Please don't worry about that, fans. Please do not worry about that. He will be signed before training camp. But are the Eagles going to bring in anybody else before camp? Give me percentage-wise. Could be a linebacker, could be a receiver. Anybody else before training camp? Do we see a little bit of tweak to this roster by Howie Roseman?
Well, I've said like Dalton Reisner, the former Broncos free agent playing guard. This guy's
That's
made
interesting.
You think it's going to be a guard if they bring in one?
Well, they love the trenches, Jody.
They do. I know.
The guy's got 62 starts as a guard in the NFL. I mean, Steen has 0, obviously. Juergens has 0, obviously. So to me, where's the harm in bringing in kind of like a guy like Reisner who can bring some of that experience? And if he doesn't make the team, fine. To be honest, I'm little surprised they haven't signed him already. But to me, he would probably be at the top of my list of guys that they could bring in at some point between now and training camp starts, or shortly after training camp begins, once they get a line on Juergens and Steen.
Interesting name from Eddie Kratz. I can't believe it wouldn't be a linebacker, but you could be right, AK. All right, yeah, as John mentioned, I've been running down the guys that you and John put together, your top 25 list, each of you getting equal voting and doing the math and coming up with the guys as to where they rank. We didn't do it yesterday and or today. Jordan Mailata at number 10, Darius Slay at number 9. And I put together my own list because you guys did it. I felt I should put in the same amount of work. I have Jordan Mailata even higher on my list. I have him at number 8. I had Slay further down at number 10. You guys had Bradbury at 12. I got Bradbury. He's not on my list yet, which means he's in the top 8. Why Slay over Bradbury? Eddie, you first.
Slay over Bradbury. I just think the experience that Slay has. I know Bradbury has a lot of experience, but I just think Slay is probably to me a better defender. In the pass game, I just feel that he is. I mean, Bradbury is a good player, but I don't think he's quite as good as Slay. And we're only talking about what, 3 different, difference of 3 in the rankings.
Right. Yeah. Close.
Yeah. But I just give Slay a little bit of an edge. I just think he's a little bit better of a shutdown corner. Now, that said, he's 32 years old, and, Bradbury's 30, or he will be 30 in August, I think. But,
yeah.
We'll see. I mean, I'm a little concerned about Slay, to be honest, but, based on what he's accomplished these past few years, I just think he's a little bit better than Bradbury.
Yeah, I would say 2 words, Justin Jefferson. When the Eagles do need to lock somebody down, they still default to Slay. So they're telling you what they think of the player. And I get it. He's 32, and he had the great first half and kind of slipped a bit in the second half. So people are concerned about the age, but 5-time Pro Bowl cornerback, lockdown corner. Bradbury's great zone corner, but there's a difference. And when I was talking to AJ Brown,
what do you think the percentage is of man-to-man and zone the Eagles are going to play this year in secondary?
Far more zone, as they did, but when they need the man, and they play a lot of matchup zone, which is sort of man-like. When they do play man, and again, Justin Jefferson, they give it to Slay because he's better at it. And he's one of the best. He's been one of the best in the NFL for years, and that's why I still rate him above. James had a great season, phenomenal season. And this is a perfect defense for James Bradbury. So for everybody who doesn't like this scheme, I mean, it fits certain players perfectly. And James would be at the top of that list. They're both really good players. It's a great problem to have. But again, if you have Justin Jefferson out there, they're going to give him the Slay.
But even with the unbelievable game against Justin Jefferson, PFF had Bradbury ranked higher than Slay last year, if I'm not mistaken. Johnny Mac?
No, Slay was still higher. Slay was I'll look it up real quick.
I like the depth they have behind those 2 guys too this year. I mean,
they got a lot of cornerbacks in camp.
Yeah, they have better, and that enabled them to move Zach McPherson to the slot.
Yeah, I like Greedy Williams. I think if he can, another guy that's injury prone, but I like Greedy Williams, and I like Keely Ringo as a rookie. He just turned 21, Keely Ringo, which is amazing to me. But I like him too. So I like those 2 players behind Slay and Bradbury.
Slay was 21. Bradbury was 27.
Okay, so slightly ahead. Yeah, I'm projecting Bradbury a little bit better this year, mainly because, as you pointed out, John, the second half you saw a drop off. Now, hey, maybe Slay turns it around. first half is the same as the second half this upcoming year. Back to being big play slate for an entire 16-game season. I don't like it when a 32-year-old guy has a lesser second half than the first half. That's why I had to put Bradbury ahead of Slay, but that's just me. All right, so you guys got your top 8. We'll keep an eye on it in Sports Illustrated.
By the way, just as a little foreshadow, I think SI, the higher powers, I think they missed July 4th, so I'm not sure where we are. I don't think number 8's out there yet, so I won't say it.
It will be out this afternoon. I'm in charge of doing that one, and that'll be out this afternoon.
And then number 7 I'll be doing, and that is the first one where Jody Mack broke the tie between number 6 and number 7. Because Ed and I were completely deadlocked. He had one player at 6. I had him at 7 and vice versa. So we had to go to Jody Mack to break the tie. You know, it's interesting. From number 12, which was Bradbury, number 11, which was Landon Dickerson, number 10, which was Mailata, number 9, which was Slay, and number 8 coming up. Ed and I had them exactly the same.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is pretty amazing.
No tiebreaker needed, but number 7 was an offensive player or defensive player?
Number 7.
Offensive. It's going to be an offensive player.
Right. Number 8, I'll tease number 8, defensive player. He was number 10 on our list last year. He's moved up 2 spots.
Very nice. That's rising quickly. Eddie, we'll let you go. Have a great rest of your afternoon. You know we're going to be getting you on before the season gets underway. As soon as the Eagles open up camp, you'll be back with us. Thanks much for doing it today.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Ed.
Ed Kratz from SI.com, John's running mate at Sports Illustrated. All right, McMullen and McDonald coming back. You know what we need to do. Put a bow on the show for today's Birds 365.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac guys, putting the ball in the show here on Birds 365. Not only the show, but the week as well. Next week, yeah, we got another countdown. We're getting that much closer to the opening of camp. We got a couple more of those before we actually get camp open up on Tuesday, the 25th. Will be the day that camp officially opens. Johnny Mac, I thank you for getting Rob Kestner involved. We've never had him on the show before. Senior producer for the Eagles for NBC 10. Did a great job with us today, as did Eddie Kratz. I had you look up the PFF rankings for me. Shame on me. Slay was ahead of Bradbury. It was all pro that I was thinking. Bradbury made all pro last year.
Second team all pro, yes.
And Slay didn't. I knew there was one rating/ranking where Bradbury actually beat out Slay. I just identified the wrong one. It'll be interesting to watch those two go against each other. Still, not gonna move off my best three-man combo at cornerback in the National Football League. It's the Eagles, and there's a drop-off to number 2. I don't know that anybody else has got the 3 guys at corner that the Eagles do, including Avonte Maddox, one of the best slot corners in the National Football League. All right, coming up this week, I'm hoping to be able to wrangle Jimmy Kempski. He did, for those of you who missed it.
Dumpster fires. We got to get the dumpster.
We haven't had Jimmy. We try and get him on every year when he does his dumpster fire column, because they are some of the most entertaining columns done. All apologies, Johnny Mack, who's a great Eagles columnist as well, but he came up with this years ago, and I look forward to reading him every single year. Not only the column itself, but then the responses thereafter from all the fan bases think that Kempski is just dumping on them. And that, oh, yeah, he is. That's exactly what he's doing, with tongue implanted in cheek, in case you didn't figure it out, like I didn't the first time I read one. Went right over my head going, man, he's harsh. Wow, Jimmy really doesn't like them. Then I realized, oh, he's doing that on purpose. So they are going to try and get Kempsey this upcoming week. I will effort that, but should be a fun week next week. You in for all 5 days next week? I'm planning on being here. How about you?
Yeah, man, 5 days. Yeah, I'm used to these 3-day weeks. We got to get back to 5 days.
Yeah, we got to do 5 full shows next week.
Yeah, man.
It will be our pleasure. Thanks to everybody who streamed in. If you hit the like button on the way out the door, won't hate you for it. If you could, like, share, and subscribe. Johnny Mac and I will be back on Monday, same bat time, same bat channel, in 2 days.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds